Have you ever gone on a diet, lost the weight, celebrated your success, and then somehow gained it all back? You're not alone. Studies show that over 80% of people who lose weight on a diet end up gaining it back within a year. And here's the shocking part. Many of them gain back even more than they lost. It's not because diets don't work. Diets work for a while, but the way we approach them almost guarantees failure. Most people treat a diet like a sprint, trying to get through the painful part as fast as possible so they can go back to what they were doing before. But here's the problem. What you were doing before is what got you into trouble in the first place. And at the core of what keeps pulling you back isn't just food, it's the emotions tied to it. Of course, weight gain can have many causes, like genetics, hormonal imbalances, and even our modern food environment. These are all important factors, and I'll cover them in future videos. But for so many people, the emotional relationship with food is the hidden driver behind why they regain the weight after a diet, and why breaking free from the yo-yo cycle feels so impossible. Food isn't just about hunger, it's about emotions. It becomes your way of dealing with shame, sadness, frustration, or even boredom. Over time, this reliance on food feels automatic, like second nature. Food is comfort, escape, and celebration all rolled into one. When life gets hard, food becomes the chocolate bar after a rough day, the tub of ice cream during heartbreak, or the pizza you order when you're feeling overwhelmed and just need a moment of comfort. It's also the reward, the treat you give yourself after a long week or a big achievement. But this emotional reliance on food can trap you in a cycle where eating becomes the only way to cope with uncomfortable emotions. As the saying goes, it's not about what you're eating, it's about what's eating you. Until that cycle is broken, no diet will ever stick, because diets don't address why you're eating in the first place. To understand why breaking free feels so hard, think of unhealthy food as more than just something you eat. Think of it as a toxic friendship. It's the friend you've relied on for years, always there when you're lonely, stressed, or just need to feel better. Sure, you know this friend isn't good for you. They're dragging you down, hurting your health, and crushing your self-esteem. But they're comfortable, familiar, and when you've relied on someone for so long, it's hard to let them go. So you decide to take a break. You go on a diet. At first, it's great, like cutting off that toxic friend and finally getting your life together. You're eating clean, working out, seeing results, and feeling healthier. But as soon as you hit your goal weight, you think, mission accomplished. And what happens? You call that friend back. You go right back to the habits that got you into trouble. Late night snacking, emotional eating, overeating, and the weight comes back fast. Because restrictive dieting doesn't just fail to fix those habits. It creates the perfect conditions for them to resurface, stronger than ever. Ever wondered why people who go on restrictive diets often end up gaining the weight back and then some? It's not just about willpower or self-control. It's about how deprivation affects your mind and body. When you're on a highly restrictive diet, your brain doesn't just register hunger, it registers scarcity. Psychologically, it feels like you're starving, and your body reacts by heightening cravings and storing fat the moment you eat more. It's your brain's way of making up for what it thinks you've lost. Now think of a rubber band. The more you stretch it, the more tension builds. At first it feels manageable. You pull it a little, and it stretches without much resistance. But the further you stretch it, the harder it gets to hold, and eventually it snaps back. And the harder you pull, the harder it snaps. This is exactly what happens when you deprive yourself on a diet. The deprivation builds, and the moment you let go, the snapback is intense. You overeat, guilt sets in, and instead of getting back on track, you eat more to bury that guilt. And then comes the shame spiral. You think to yourself, I've ruined everything. Or maybe, I'll never lose weight. Some people even go further, telling themselves, I'm hopeless, or I'm just destined to be like this. And in that moment, food becomes both punishment and comfort. You eat to punish yourself for failing, while also using food to feel better about the failure. This vicious cycle of deprivation, overindulgence, and self-punishment is why so many people conclude that diets don't work. But the real issue isn't the diets themselves, it's the way we think about them. Diets are often seen as a temporary fix, not as a way to create long-term meaningful change. Most people treat the diet like a sprint, something to endure just long enough to reach the finish line and go back to normal. But here's the hard truth. Those normal habits are what made you gain the weight in the first place. If you return to them, you're just starting the cycle all over again. You can't go back to what you were doing before and expect different results. Diets that focus only on short-term restriction fail because they don't address the habits and emotions that got you there in the first place. Without changing the underlying pattern, it's like trying to empty a sinking boat without fixing the leak. So how do you escape this cycle? The answer isn't deprivation, it's gradual change. Instead of focusing on what you can't eat, focus on what you can. Add more fruits and vegetables to your meals. Swap sugary sodas for water. Eat slightly smaller portions, but don't starve yourself. These small changes might not feel as dramatic, but they're easier to stick with, and over time, they add up. Gradual change also avoids the psychological deprivation that triggers the snapback. By addressing both the habits and the emotions behind your eating, you're not just losing weight, you're breaking free from the cycle altogether. At the end of the day, the goal isn't just to lose weight, it's to change how you think about food. Stop treating it like a toxic friend you keep running back to. Stop stretching the rubber band until it snaps. And most importantly, stop punishing yourself with cycles of deprivation and guilt. The best diet isn't the one that gets you to your goal weight. It's the one that frees you from being enslaved to food, guilt, and the endless cycle of deprivation.